It's that button I have. It's all ADA.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Arvada City Council meeting for today, April 14th, 2026. Ms. Rush, if you'll do the roll call.
Mayor Simpson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mormon?
Here.
Councilmember Ambrose?
Here.
Councilmember Davis?
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Here. Here.
Councilmember Griffith?
Here.
Councilmember Levison?
Here. Thank you. We have two workshops this evening. The first is the City Attorney's Office Annual Update. Ms. Morris, welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, Council. As you know, my name is Rachel Morris. I am the City Attorney, and my team and I are here today to provide you with the City Attorney's Office Annual Update. This is the first year we've done this presentation, so we're combining a little bit of education with information about what we've done and accomplished in 2025. We will be finished in 30 minutes. I started a stopwatch. We're going to make sure that we are timely. Once we get done with those slides, then we'll take questions. So we'll take a quick look at the agenda. I'm going to give you a very broad overview of what our office looks like. We're going to hear from each of our three divisions. We're going to talk a little bit about our administrative work and then also our organizational contributions. So first of all, who we are. We are a team of 23 talented, hardworking professionals who are dedicated to public service. The employees in our department include risk and claims analysts, attorneys, paralegals, legal assistants, and safety specialists. We also have 9 safety technicians who work for us on a part-time basis to help us advance the safety program in addition to their other jobs at the city. Our employees are divided into 3 teams, which we're going to talk a little bit more about throughout the presentation. We are very focused on our values, which guide us on everything we do. We pride ourselves on providing great customer service, regardless of whether we're working for a city employee or a defendant in municipal court. We provide solutions, not just answers to questions. We create high-quality work product in an efficient way. In order to accomplish that, we have workflows and processes and templates that help us maintain both timely work product and high quality. We are strategic business partners that provide visible value to the organization, and we help the city reach its goal while at the same time mitigating risks. We are also very focused on our data. We collect and analyze data about our work to ensure that we're being good stewards of public resources, to ensure that we're not creating bottlenecks in any processes, and to maintain our otherwise streamlined work processes. So in terms of where we collect our data, I wanted to give you a very brief look at that because we're going to be referencing it all throughout the presentation. First of all, in our legal divisions, we use a software called Practice Panther. It collects information about files and about the number of hours that we work. We collect and process data based on who we're working for and what type of work we're doing, so you'll see those numbers. Axon is another case management system used by our prosecution division, and then Origami Risk is what we use in our risk management division in order to collect data and analyze data there. So for the most part, the data that we're talking to you about tonight will come out of one of those systems. So what is it that we do around here? We have a lot of different things that we accomplish. Some of those things that you see on your agenda, contracts. Obviously, we write contracts. Those come in front of council if they're above a certain level. We do also prosecute offenses in municipal court. We provide general legal advice. Civil litigation, we represent the city in court, all kinds of different courts and administrative proceedings. We write ordinances and policies and rules. We also provide risk management services and run the city's citywide safety program. In terms of who we work for, we collect data around who we work for, we label our files. I want to explain first the city attorney's office piece of this pie because it looks massive. It's not necessarily intuitive what goes into it. There are a lot of things that we work on that are for multiple departments, and so they're not necessarily attributable to one specific department. So we label those city attorney's office, like lobbying is a good example of that. There's also legal work that we do that naturally falls into our office, like for instance, the contracts we do for our insurance brokers. So that would be included in that piece of the pie as well. But then there's some pieces of that that are for training and things like that. Our 3 biggest areas where we spend our time, or the departments we spend our time with, are infrastructure, municipal court, primarily for prosecution, and then the police department. And I will hand it off now. Before I leave this slide, risk management, this is legal in terms of the hours in this pie chart, but risk management spends most of its time with infrastructure, parks, PD, and CMO related to homelessness. Obviously, we do serve every department and employees in every department, but that's generally how our workflow looks.
So good evening. My name is Jessica Morales, and I am the Deputy City Attorney overseeing our Civil Division. Our Civil Division is made up of 7 attorneys, 2 legal specialists, and 1 litigation paralegal. On the attorney side, we have Kelsey Sargent, Janelle Strickler, Megan McCall, Zach Woolweaver, and Kylie Justice. We also had an open position that was vacant due to Nora Stenson's retirement that we recently filled, and you guys will get to meet that attorney later this summer. On the administrative side, we have Tammy Headland, Gail Walker, and Erica Pierce. As an overview, the Civil Division works on things like providing legal advice and counsel, legislative and policy work, reviewing, drafting, and negotiating contracts, and litigation. Okay. So about 34% of our time on the civil side goes into providing consultation, information, recommendations, and legal evaluation services to the city. So this could be many different things, from answering a simple legal question over the phone to having our attorneys participate in long-term multidisciplinary research and larger projects with the city. We're conducting legal research, drafting memoranda, providing legal support at several of our meetings, and providing advice on the impact of new legislation and how that could work with the city and our police departments. So this graph here that you see on the slide represents the number of legal advice and counsel requests that we received from 2020 to 2025. They reflect a wide range of services, from day-to-day advisory work to complex legal research. And as you can see throughout this graph, one of our busiest departments is our infrastructure department, and then joining them pretty close there in 2025 was our community and economic development department. Okay, so legal advice and counsel also includes providing support at several meetings. In 2025, we supported 85 meetings, and as you'll see there, the majority of those meetings involved our city council meetings, our city council workshops, and city council study sessions. But as you'll see there, we also support our housing authority, our planning commission, our board of adjustment, our liquor licensing authority, our design review advisory committee, and IADA. At these meetings, the role of our attorneys is to provide legal advice, address legal questions that come up during the meeting, ensure that during the meeting we're following proper procedures, that we're sticking to our agendas, that our motions are correct, and generally just helping those teams with anything that comes up during that meeting. Okay, so we've also in 2025 shared our expertise throughout the state of Colorado and to different cities. So we presented at both of CML's annual conferences. You'll see there on the top left, our city attorney, Rachel Morris. She participated on a legal ethics panel at CML's annual fall conference on municipal law. And then there on the bottom left, you'll see our deputy city attorney, Laura Hemler, and she presented at CML's annual summer conference in Breckenridge on the topics of mastering state and federal funding, going through applications with another panel of speakers. Okay. Our civil team spent about 8.5% of our total time on legislative and policy drafting. We did 30 ordinances, 123 resolutions, and we drafted 9 policies and rules. So some highlights from 2025 are that we updated our personnel rules and HR policies. We updated the purchasing ordinance. We did updates to our city code to better align with city organizational changes, accounting for the move from utilities and a public works department into one infrastructure work system. And we also worked with finance to create a policy on gifts and gift cards. Okay, so our attorneys also take part in legislative advocacy on behalf of the city and on issues impacting law enforcement. So in this work, our attorneys analyze the impacts of new legislation and what that could mean for the city. We provide analysis to the city to help the city better determine whether or not to take a position on a bill. And so shown on this slide, you'll see there on the top left, our Senior Assistant City Attorney Pedrick Emrine testifying at the House Judiciary Subcommittee on House Bill 251114, which had to do with defense review of physical evidence ahead of trials. And through this advocacy, the bill ended up being amended before passage into law, making it a much more favorable law for police departments across the state. There at the bottom, you'll see Pedrick again, and with our now retired police legal advisor, Aaron Jacks, who were recognized in 2025 with the Chief's Citation by Arvada Police Department for the work they did in the legislature. Okay, so contracts. We do a lot of contracts on the civil side. This includes anything from land acquisition, intergovernmental agreements, construction contracts, services agreements, and you name it, we're doing it as far as contracts. In 2025, we spent about 21% of our time on contracts. We completed, that means reviewed, drafted, negotiated 616 contracts. 44 of those were emergency contracts, and so what it means is when we get an emergency contract, that means our client departments need it now, as soon as possible on a shorter time frame, and we're able to prioritize those and work with our departments to get those done. In 2025, you'll see there on the graph that our infrastructure department was again one of our busiest departments, which makes sense because they're one of our largest departments and they're taking on a lot of projects across the city, whether it's sewer, infrastructure, roads, and so they're a very busy department and we spend a lot of time doing contracts with them. Some of our highlights from 2025 are that we executed a purchase and sale agreement for the land that the replacement water treatment plant is going to be built on. We also did several contracts for murals across the city, which now our residents get to enjoy when they're out there walking in our parks or going to Old Town and places like that. And we did a lot of intergovernmental agreements with other government entities in support of mutual goals. So one of those was a cold weather sheltering IGA that we executed with Jefferson County and several cities. We also did some IGAs with Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes for consultation services related to the Gold Strike Park redevelopment. And we did an IGA with the city of Wheat Ridge concerning maintenance of the Clear Creek Trail, and those are just a couple examples. You all see some of our larger contracts, our IGAs and our contracts over 500,000, but there are so many other contracts that our teams also work on throughout the year. And with that, I will hand it back to Rachel.
Okay, now we'll talk a little bit about civil litigation. So what we mean when we talk about civil litigation is that we appear in court on behalf of the city, either filing claims against someone on behalf of the city or defending claims that are filed against the city. So we do that in state and federal court and state and federal administrative proceedings in all kinds of different cases. There's a lot of different issues that we litigate. As council is aware, we have a pending case related to home rule. There's a lot of cases related to civil rights we litigate, personal injury, construction defects, breach of contract. This is roughly 12% of legal's time is spent on civil litigation. And I want to talk a little bit about the numbers as well. When I say 19 active lawsuits and administrative complaints, that's what's filed in 2025, but don't panic. More than half of those, in fact, almost 3/4 of those, we were on the left side of the V, meaning that we were the ones who originally filed the case. So we do a lot of things on behalf of the city, trying to be really proactive in how we pursue people who've damaged city infrastructure, or some of those are what we call TERPOs or ERPOs. It's a type of gun violence restraining order that we can request for those with elevated risk of harming themselves or others. So there were 5 or 6 of those that we did last year as well. In terms of our outcomes, out of the cases, this is what we litigated in 2025. We had 10 cases resolved in the city's favor. That was through dismissal or a voluntary, either by the court or voluntary dismissal by the plaintiff. We also had a class action where we collected, assisted the city in collecting over $1 million as part of that class action. So In terms of all our litigation work, we also do what we call litigation watch list matters. Those are matters where, again, we're trying to be proactive. If we hear about something, wherever it is in the city, that we're like, you know what, we should look into that. Because we want to prevent litigation from happening. That's what a watch list matter is. So we try to be very proactive about that. Subpoenas, we also receive those or are served with those. City employees are regularly asked to testify in court cases, or somebody's asking us for records to be produced as part of a court case. So those are what we received and processed in 2025. So with that, I will hand it off to Laura Hemler to talk about the criminal division.
Good evening, Council. My name is Laura Hemler, and I'm a Deputy City Attorney, and I am responsible for our criminal division and our admin team. So our criminal division is made up of one Deputy City Attorney, that's me, and then we have 2 prosecutors, a police legal advisor, and 2 admin staff. And our primary responsibility is prosecution, but then we're also responsible for providing legal services to the Municipal Court and the Arvada Police Department. And so at first I'm going to start off talking about prosecution, if I went backwards. There we go. So 25% of the office time was spent on prosecution. And what prosecution really is a team. We have the 2 prosecutors, so it's the team that handles violations of our Arvada City Code. And these violations can range from animal cases, your barking dogs, to traffic, speeding. And then we even have a couple of misdemeanors like assault and physical harassment. We're seeing right now, or last year we saw, and then a little bit this year, we are seeing an increase in cases. The total number of cases, and Judge Kurtz will get into a little bit more detail in her presentation, but they've really returned to their pre-pandemic levels. And so not only do we have more cases, the cases are taking longer to go through the process. And we think the reason for this is the cases are a little bit more complex. There's a lot more evidence with the body-worn cameras. There's a lot more material that has to be reviewed. And we're also seeing multiple charges on cases. And then volume overall, I believe our police department is now fully staffed, so we are just seeing an increase in cases, increase in tickets overall. And that's really required us to look at our efficiency. And Rachel talked about this a little bit, but in order to improve that efficiency, we moved to a paperless file management system, and that's Axon Justice. And what Axon does is it aligns with the police department's Axon resources and allows us to put all of the evidence, all the case management in one place. So our prosecutors can access it, and then our admin team can organize it, make sure we're responding to discovery requests and getting that information out to defendants who request that information. So I want to talk a little bit about the numbers. So last year, the team handled 7,760 total citations, so that's total number of tickets. Some of those tickets you can handle or someone can resolve with a plea by mail. They don't have to come into court. But other ones, they can come into court, or even if you have plea by mail, you can come into court if you want to, and that's where you see that arraignment number. So the 4,889. An arraignment is the very first appearance in court. Somebody comes in, they meet with the prosecutor, and they can decide whether they want to plead guilty and resolve the case that day, or they can plead not guilty and eventually head to trial if that's what they wish to do. If they plead not guilty, they go to the pretrial conference. So that's where you see that 445 number. A pretrial conference is where the person comes back a second time usually, sometimes more than that, but to really try and work out a deal with the prosecutor and handle any pretrial issues. And ultimately, if the case can't be resolved, then we do head to trial. And that's where you see the other 2 numbers. So in 2025, we prepared 142 bench trials and 30 jury trials, and then 20 of those 142 were held, and 3 of the 30 jury trials were held. What's really cool about these couple of numbers that I just went through is that they do get smaller as we go along in the process, which indicates to us that our team works really hard to find those resolutions that work for both sides. So it's not just what works for the city, but it's also what works for the defendant too. So we're really proud that those numbers decrease as we move along in the process. And then speaking of the process, the 750, that's the number of discovery requests that our admin team fulfilled. And I talked about that with our Axon Justice. So a defendant can come in, usually early on in the process, and request a copy of all the evidence that's in the case. And that's called your discovery. And they request that, and then it's our team's job to put it all together and make sure they get it and keep track of it. So we did that 750 times last year. And then another part of the criminal team's responsibility, it's adjacent to prosecution, but we also provide training to the Arvada Police Department. That's where you see the 19. And then we also assist the court in the one small step cases. So we have 128 of those last year. And these are just a couple of pictures from last year. So you have Jessica, who you heard from earlier, swearing in, and then you see Rob and Sarah in the upper right, lower left, and those are our two prosecutors swearing in. And then on the bottom right, you have our whole team, and they doing a tour of the Marshall Street apartments. And finally, in addition to prosecution, I talked a little bit about the services that we provide to the Arvada Police Department and the Municipal Court. And overall, these are usually general advising, specific questions that come up, and then a lot of training. So 6.8% of the office's time was spent providing these services. And training is really the big one. We do a lot of training, especially on the Fourth Amendment. And that's usually provided by our police legal advisor, though other members of the team will help out as well. And now I will pass it off to Drew to talk about our Risk and Safety Division.
Good evening. My name is Drew Shively. I'm the city's Insurance and Risk Program Director, and I'm also an attorney. I'm responsible for supervising the Risk and Safety team as well as the various programs that we have. The Risk and Safety team is really involved in a lot of things. However, I'm just going to talk about really the four main areas tonight that we spend a majority of our time focused on. So the first is insurance coverage. The second is adjusting claims, then collecting subrogation and restitution, and then finally safety initiatives. So we have a pretty small team. It consists currently of 4 folks, including myself, and then we have 2 risk and claims analysts, Allison Lancey and Crystal Huntley, as well as a safety specialist for the city, and that's Jeremy Kochi. And we're looking to, and we'll be filling a 5th position for another risk and claims analyst position here shortly. So one of the main areas, as I mentioned, that we focus our time and energy is on procuring, maintaining, and advising on insurance coverage for the city. So in 2025, we secured insurance coverage for over $317 million in city-owned assets. So this included properties, so anywhere from City Hall to Annex to some of our shops out there. We secured coverage for that. Nearly 400 licensed automobiles that are out on our streets, as well as over 400 pieces of equipment such as machinery, tractors, non-licensed vehicles that our teams use, and other tools as well. So the city and its affiliates are insured under 23 separate lines of coverage, and this includes anything from our property coverage and workers' compensation coverage to some of our liability coverage, so general liability, automobile liability, even our fiduciary liability coverages, just to better protect and ensure that we're prepared to the extent we need that coverage available to us. The insurance coverage secured by our team also extends beyond the city to some of its affiliates. So this would include Aura, IATA, Ralston House, Arvada Housing Authority as well. And then we also frequently advise on the types and limits of insurance that are required when the city contracts with external organizations. So we'll review a lot of contracts. We'll work closely with our civil team as well as the purchasing department within finance. Another area of great focus is our claims program. Our team handles claims both within the organization as well as claims that are made by community members. So in 2025, we handled 94 workers' compensation claims. 62 of those involved injuries to our workforce. The other 32 were what we call notice only, and that essentially means that it was a minor injury that didn't actually necessitate some sort of medical treatment or medical care. We also adjusted 465 property and casualty claims in 2025. Of those, 315 claims were actually made against the city, and then 150 were claims that were reported to us and investigated by our teams, but for whatever reason, the claimant decided not to pursue those claims. Throughout the claims process, our team not only works to adjust and settle the claims, but also to preserve evidence such as photographs, documentation, witness statements, and other information that's ultimately very useful in defending the city against any future lawsuits. The third area I wanted to mention involves the collection of subrogation and restitution. So subrogation is a process of us going through and asking or requesting that the city be reimbursed for damage that may have been caused to city-owned property. So a lot of times we're talking with insurance carriers, trying to recoup that money back into the pockets for the city. Restitution is a really similar process, but that's where the court, we utilize the court process, where we're asking the court to enter either a judgment or some sort of order requiring a defendant to, in fact, reimburse the city for something that they have damaged. In 2025, we recovered $250,000 for the city. This is what we were able to return to the city. And we asked for nearly $105,000 in restitution from Colorado courts, and were awarded just under $42,000. And that $42,000 is still pending collection, but we do have an order in place indicating that that defendant or those defendants are required to make payments, periodic payments, back to the city. Part of this process, our team has testified twice in the last 6 months at restitution hearings, and actually I was supposed to testify earlier this week, but it got postponed, so there'll be another one here coming up shortly. And our team also works closely with the litigation team when pursuing lawsuits to recoup money for the city. And as Rachel had mentioned a moment ago, there's a subrogation action that we pursued against a contractor that was involved with damaging a sewer main during a boring operation last year. And ultimately, we were able to recover close to $100,000 and get that returned to the city. The last big area I wanted to focus on involves employee safety initiatives. So our team works really hard to keep other city folks safe, ensuring that they can get home after their shifts. So in 2025, we had a lot of big accomplishments. And I'll just highlight these here, but we had 26 weekly brief articles published concerning safety and really aiming to keep safety on the forefront of our employees' minds. We also recognized 159 employees for safety recognition awards, and there on the right side you'll see a coin from last year that we were able to honor these folks and recognize their dedication to safety and the things in which they're doing. We also awarded nearly $20,000 to city teams for employee initiated efforts to be safe. So we were able to equip them with equipment and other things that they needed in order to do the job more safely. And then finally, we launched the new safety technician program, and this really consists of 9 folks from throughout the organization that are able to prioritize safety within their department. So essentially, we share part of their time with these other departments within the organization so that they can focus on safety-led initiatives. And as you can see here, there's a number of things that they accomplished this year, including a lot of training as well as inventories and inspections and investigations and audits as well. I did see some excitement, I think, when you sat down, but there, hopefully at each of your stations, is the 2026 coin featuring a celery person. We affectionately call him Sid, but wanted to make sure each of you received those. And then lastly, in closing, I'd just like to note that our team really accomplished a lot of things this year in 2025, I should say, and even had some fun along the way. So here the first photo is of the safety technicians that I mentioned a moment ago, and this was a brand new program that we launched in 2025, and we've had a lot of great success with it, and really excited to continue that here in 2026. The second photo is of our safety specialist. We coordinated with Arvada Fire to go through some fire extinguisher training, and ultimately we're able to use this to create a training that we can use for all city employees. If you haven't used a fire extinguisher, I very much encourage you to go out and find a fire and put it out, because it is a lot of fun. So something you might try if you get the opportunity. Don't hesitate.
Please don't try that at home.
Yeah. And then lastly, there's another photo of our safety specialist, and here he's leading a training about cause mapping for our safety techs and how to properly identify and analyze hazards and safety incidents. So with that, I'll pass it back to Laura, and I want to thank you all very much for your time.
All right, well, if you can't find a fire and you have a figurative fire, our admin team can get you pointed in the right direction. But our admin team is the other half of my team, and they have 5 full-time people, and they also have 1 part-time, and then we are in the process of hiring a second part-time person. And last year, they created 919 matters. And the way the matters work is we have a software called Practice Panther, and any one of our client departments can submit a request either to do a contract or answer a question or provide advising. They submit this request to the software and it goes directly to our admin team. And our admin team then works with the client to get all the documents we need and then any other resources, and then it gets assigned to an attorney. And the attorney works on that matter, completes it, and then they close out the matter. So our admin team created 919 of those last year. What Practice Panther really allows us to do is maintain our process efficiency. Without it, this was several years ago, I think before Rachel started, but what we were seeing was just a lot of duplicative work. We didn't know who was doing what. We didn't know what documents were where. And Practice Panther really allows us to streamline this. We're able to move things through quickly. We're not duplicating work. And then it also gives us a lot of data, and that's a lot of the data you're seeing tonight has been pulled from Practice Panther. And in addition to creating the matters, our admin team also handles liens, releasing those, making sure they end up where they need to be. So 609 of those were filed last year, and then you can see how that breaks down by subject matter. And with that, I will pass it back to Rachel.
All right, I will wrap it up real quick. Just wanted to highlight that our attorneys and other professional staff do a whole lot more than just provide advice. We are part of the employee committee, the human experience committee. We participate in emergency tabletop exercises, attend employee events, and also participate in city training. So we really try to integrate with the city team. And that is all we've got, so we'll take questions now.
Councilmember Ambrose.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Thank you. Can we go back to the pie chart?
Yes, okay.
Sorry. Now I'm asking questions of the PowerPoint. So the question I have, yep, there it is. On the pie chart is there's 2 slices that aren't labeled. Is that fine? I mean,
So they're probably some of our smaller, it's the smaller percentages,
Right.
and it just didn't fit on there.
okay.
So the other departments, notice that the labels don't include all of the departments, so it's gonna be something that is less than the lowest one up there, which I think is Parks, Golf, and Hospitality. So it's maybe finance or something like that.
Okay.
Finance, HR, those 2.
Okay. And can you go forward one slide? I'm looking for the bar graph that had what you all spend a lot of your time on or requests. I was just curious, what is the like legal services requests that happen often with parks?
With parks, so for instance, they may have a question come in about one of the committees that they work on. You know, how do we handle this issue with the Parks Advisory Committee? Or they have a legal question come up about, let's say, an easement. That's something that they do a lot of, trying to decide where our easements are and who works in them, who does the work. So those are a couple of examples.
Okay, yeah, there's just a huge spike in 21. And the other thing I'll say about these bar charts too is I think, you know, prosecution did a pretty good job about going back and comparing to pre-pandemic levels, and I think that's useful information because it's hard to know from looking at the 2 bar charts that are in this part if like, oh, are our services like totally increasing for some reasons, or is it we're just
Right.
getting back to those levels that we had?
So I think there's a couple different reasons. This bar chart right here, it's the number of requests we receive, not necessarily the amount of time that we spend. So
Okay.
sometimes there's a bunch of little requests, and that will create a spike. So 23, we were probably working at least part of that year on some of the road expansion projects, property acquisition, stuff like that, and various other things. Also in 2020, I mean, pandemic there, so it's lower than it was, but we started recording our time really in 2019. So as we get better at capturing our time and recording what comes in 2020 our clients may not have been submitting as many requests that way. We may have gotten them by email and then put them into the system.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Councilmember Davis.
you've come a long way, baby, in your risk management and safety. It's fantastic. I'm so glad that you're using origami risk as well, because it's what I'm very familiar with. And your program is very well put together. One of my questions is for the inspections and then the follow-up to any kind of a workers' comp claim. Do you look at your policies and procedures, maybe update those so that we don't have another occurrence? Okay, that's great.
Absolutely. So we do something that's called cause mapping, and it's not looking for fault, but looking for why did this happen. So a lot of times we'll sit down with a team. It's really fascinating to watch our safety specialist, Jeremy Kochi, go through this. He sits down with the team that it happened to and says, okay, so here's what happened. Why did that happen? And he just continues to ask that until he gets to that root cause. Until he gets to that root cause, and then we take those root causes and we implement solutions for them.
Well, I think it's great, and I'm so impressed by what you have done in 2 years. Amazing, and Mr. Shively, congratulations.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you so much. So one question I had is, with our code updates coming up and how we're tracking more with STRs and different things and those responsibilities and things like that continue to roll out, how well do you feel current tools and staffing align with what's needed to support that implementation?
So it's going to differ depending on the project. So in terms of our process on the legal and risk side, whenever we're writing an ordinance or a policy, we don't do that in a vacuum. We will sit down and talk with each client department and say, okay, what is reasonable under these circumstances? And they really dictate to us what they think they can handle, and that's what we put into the ordinance. Sometimes where it gets a little bit off track is if we get an external request or if we have a mandate from the state, we're not getting to choose some of those things, and so there may not be enough resources there. But also sometimes when we get requests from council, we've got to figure out where we find those resources, where we find all those things. Otherwise, if it's the city team putting it together, we make sure that we have that or that we really need it and we know what resources we need to move forward.
Councilmember Griffith.
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation, very comprehensive. I have one question. It's about the Axon program.
Okay.
I was just wondering if we had any feedback from APD. I know it's a great program for the legal side. I want to make sure that our officers are also supportive.
You know, I don't know that we have specifically heard anything about it from their side of things.
That could be a good thing, too.
Yeah, so I would defer to the chief on that.
Okay, well, certainly something I'd like to follow up with. Sometimes when we implement things that help one department, they may encumber another, so I just want to make sure that it's something they're also supportive of.
Yep. They had that in place before we did. Sure.
The other thing that I'll add with Axon, because Axon was implemented last year, is Axon is the system that our police department is actually very familiar with. They use it a lot, and so it works really well, integrating a lot of their evidence, like their body-worn camera and things like that. So it's pretty streamlined. It didn't create too many difficulties with our integration and our move to Axon as far as it had to do with working with our police department.
What did we use previously to organize? Because the body-worn cameras are pretty new.
That would be more a question for the police department on what they used. They use Axon now. We didn't have a system prior to having Axon. We were a papered organization, and so we had our little files, and that's what the attorneys took to court with them. It was all filed work, and then we worked really hard to transition and work to move to Axon, and now our attorneys are very good at just documenting all of their cases through our Axon system.
Sounds like a winner to me. I look forward to hearing from the chief, too. Thank you.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Well, that was a state edict to have body-worn cameras, so that wasn't of choice.
Yeah.
So, I just want to say great job. I know you all don't get to come up very often, so good job to come up and talk about what you do and brag about it for a little bit. We don't get to see the quiet group in the back office doing something that's important. So I just want to say thanks for putting together an efficient and concise presentation that met 30 minutes. It's awesome. But it was packed with information and kind of shows you're forced to load and the proficiency of the group. So good job. I don't have any questions for you guys. So
I'll
Keep-
just,
Keep the coins. Keep the coins coming.
Keep the
'Cause I
coins.
got
Yeah.
last year's. I'm
Yeah,
looking
you
for
can
next
keep the
year's too.
coins.
I
and
keep those.
let's keep the slightly demented designing that we have on these. Like, if we can flip forward, I was telling,
Oh, yeah.
just flip to the other one. I was telling Councilmember Ambrose about last year's coin, which I still have in my car because it entertained me. Those eyes, yeah. And
It's
so,
memorable.
like, I love these, and our celery man, he's very bulked up, so that's awesome. I love it. Ms. Morris, I know we get to hear from you on some of these achievements, but I love that we're sharing this with the public so that they get to see more fulsomely. I love that the deputies are all here. Thank you, everybody, for your time and effort tonight and for your work throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our second workshop this evening is the Municipal Court Annual Update, and we will welcome Judge Katie Kurtz. Welcome, Judge Kurtz.
Good evening, council members. I wanted to introduce my team members that I have here with me. I've got my two deputy court administrators. They're here with me, Vicki Wire on the right, or rather on the left, and Sarah Meyer on the right. Our court administrator was not able to be here tonight. She's been out on leave for a couple days now. I too am shooting for 30 minutes, so get ready, buckle up. You know, I talk very fast, and I'm going to leave questions for the end if that works for everybody. Our purpose is to support the community and to provide community safety for our community. We take this very seriously. I believe in meeting people where they are and balancing accountability and compassion. Most of our people who come into our court, it's their only court experience with the criminal justice system, and I take that responsibility very seriously, that every single person who walks into my courtroom feels like they were treated with dignity and respect. I've got a judicial philosophy about most people are very good people who just happen to make a bad choice on any given day, and our job is to give them all the tools and resources that they need to get to a better place in life. This is my amazing team, or most of my amazing team. My dog Gracie is not part of my team, but this was our holiday party that we had at my house, and Gracie really wanted to be a part of the picture, so that's Grace. She's a little camera shy, but she really wanted to be a part of the picture. You've met most of my administrative team here. I now have 9 relief judges, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I've got 2 probation officers and 10 court clerks. I believe it's 8 full-time court clerk spots. We have 2 job share positions at the moment. I'm going to start with celebrations because we have a lot of things to celebrate over the past year. We started the year with we started 2025 with 3 relief judges, and we're now up to 9. So we added 6 full-time relief, not full-time relief judges, but 6 relief judges to our staff, which was incredible. So despite the fact that that ballot measure did not pass, the good news about it is that the social media and education around the ballot measure helped to educate the public of the need for relief judges, which helped me recruit some really high-valued, great integrity relief judges. Thankfully, we're all headed up to our judges conference this week. We've got 3 judges who are attending the new judges boot camp tomorrow. I made sure that they made it up there safely because there's some chaos going on I-70 right now. Thankfully, they all made it up there safely. But we've got a really great crew, and I'm really excited about them. I always do a quick check-in on relief judge wages because that's something that some of you may not be familiar with, but there was a concern when I first came in about the relief judge usage. So I always try to be very mindful of how much we are using relief judges because I always know that it is at the expense to the city. Every time we have a relief judge come in, that is more money that we're paying. So prior to me starting 2018, 2019, 2020, obviously our numbers jumped down because we're closed for court for a long period in 2020, but it averaged about $100,000 in relief judge wages. We dipped way down 2020 through 2024. Our numbers were pretty low. You'll see that the numbers spiked back up in 2025. There's several reasons for this. A big part of that is that we had 6 new relief judges. Each relief judge takes about 40 hours to train, and we pay them for training. We pay them $100 an hour, and so just from the training alone, that cost about $4,000 per judge. With 6 judges, there's about 24,000 just in training the 6 new relief judges this past year. So that's a large percentage of that spike in relief judge wages over the past year. In addition, and we'll talk more about running 2 courtrooms. In 2025, we ran 2 courtrooms, meaning we had a court docket session going in the courtroom and another court docket session going on in here in council chambers. Historically, we usually only do it maybe once or twice a year. In 2025, we did it 8 times. So that means we're paying for a relief judge to run that second courtroom. What I will give you a quick preview of, and we'll talk about it a little bit, is so far in Q1 of 2026, we've run a second courtroom 10 times just in the first quarter because our docket numbers are that high. So stay tuned for more information about that. Another celebration is we are now paperless. So on the left side of this image, hooray! This is a project I've been working on since I came on board in 2021. On the left side, you can see our old paper-based files, and on the right side, our file wall is now empty. We still have some files to scan into our system. Those are warrants, old motions to impose, so cases that are still outstanding where someone hasn't come in the past year, but any new case that comes in is automatically paperless. And we're really whittling down the amount. I think we're down to 1 book case. So that's super exciting for me. It's making things much more efficient. I can tell you on Fridays, it always felt like half the time my staff was just looking for files to prepare for the docket for the next week, which was mind-boggling. There's no more looking for files because they're all contained in the computer system now. Our paperless process, as you can see on the left, anytime anything needed to happen on a file, the file was taken from my clerk's office to my office, back to the clerk's office, back to the courtroom, to the city attorney, and there was so much inefficiency just through that process. On the right, it's all contained in a work queue, and we can just send it back and forth to each other really efficiently, and no files ever get lost. So it's really quite beautiful. The other thing that this allows me to do is it allows me, so for example, this week I'm going up to the judges conference. Cases are going to stack up, paperwork's going to stack up, but I can continue to work on those things remotely now, whereas in the past, I'd come home and have huge piles of paperwork saved up. So that's another created efficiency that I can continue to stay on top of the paperwork even when I'm out of the office. Paperless case management also allows for electronic filing of documents, which we often get from our city attorneys, an easily reviewable audit trail. So one of the most beautiful things that we've seen is I now can track the second a person checks in to court, how long it takes them to see one of my probation officers, or how long it takes to see the city attorney, how long from there it takes to get into the courtroom, how long it takes to the courtroom to check out. I know it by the minute now, and it's really beautiful so that when we have inefficiencies or feedback on our customer service surveys on this took too long, I can go back and track exactly how long each step in the process took. We never had that in the paper docket file process. We have much better improved collaboration, streamlined processes, better data management collection. So it's really, really a beautiful thing. One of the things that we were just talking about earlier today, and this is just another example, is someone brought up how often do we impose no possession of animals as a condition of sentence? And Ms. Wire was able to look it up in our computer system just by pulling a report of the 4 cases that I did in the past 5 years. So again, this paperless case management system has been really incredible for us. Another celebration is we excel at customer service. So that is the heart of everything that we do in our job. If you ask my team, what is your why? Why are you here? Every single one of them says, I love to help people. I think that's evident through their work, and we give a customer service survey to every single defendant who comes through our doors. I'd say we probably get about maybe a 60 to 70% return rate, which is pretty good. And we print them all out, or they're all printed out, we compile them, and every single team member on my team reviews them, signs off that they've reviewed them, signs off that they've reviewed the comments, everything, so that we all know where we stand. This is from January of this year, and as you see, we have about an 86%, 87% between very good and excellent. Which is pretty good. And then just so you know, I'm not cherry picking, a good month for us. In February of 2026, again, we had about an 85% approval rating. Some of the responses we received or comments we received, everyone was very kind and professional, truly an unexpected experience. Good people doing a great job, fast and friendly, thank you. Everyone I spoke to treated me with respect and courtesy. This was a very positive experience. The judge was very kind and not judgmental to me and every person I saw before myself in the courtroom. Very courteous, friendly, and helpful. And that's pretty consistent. On occasion, we do get a bad review or bad feedback from someone. We've gotten some funny ones that I won't share that are just downright inappropriate, but for the most part, we get some pretty good reviews, and I'm very proud of my team for that. In terms of case statistics, this is important for you to know just to see where our trend is going. In terms of cases filed per year, as you can see, it's going up. And in 2025, we had about 7,700 cases. Those are the cases that the prosecution team talked about. Those are the cases that they're filing with the court. Just in Q1 so far this year, we had about 2,700 cases. If we stay on that same track, we will hit about 10,800 cases this year. So again, our numbers are going up. Just in January alone with moving traffic violations, in January 2025, we had 530 cases. In January 2026, we had 1,000 cases. So it almost doubled just in moving traffic violations. Other factors that may increase our numbers in 2026 is we now have a fully staffed police department. So when you look back at our Q1 numbers, that's before our police department became fully staffed because most of the officers who were hired during that time period are with a field training officer. So they have not been cut loose on the streets alone by themselves. That means we're going to get about 30 new officers patrolling the streets. When the city of Thornton saw their police department fully staffed, their case numbers ran from about 8,000 a year to 13,000 a year within a 1-year period. So that's when I say buckle up. It could get busy here. Again, other things that we anticipate may increase our case numbers is we've been talking with the city attorney's office about taking in motor vehicle registration violations, and that's something that's going to come in front of you. In the 2025 legislative session, House Bill 1112 was passed. One of our local representatives ran that bill, Rep. Tatone ran that bill, and that allows local municipalities to handle motor vehicle registration violations where historically those were handled in the state. It's a very good thing because those issues should be handled locally, but it certainly will increase our case numbers. I have talked with infrastructure about handling water restriction violation appeals. As you know, as of April 15th, we're going to implement water restrictions. If someone does receive a citation, they can pay their citation and hopefully amend their behavior. But if they want to appeal that citation, that appeal would come to the municipal court. I don't know what that's going to look like quite yet. And then we anticipate a fair number of fireworks violations and open burning violations. We've already seen meetings between ourselves, the police department, and the fire department with concerns about open burning and the wildlife danger, or the wildfire danger that we're going to be facing this summer. So we anticipate we may see an uptick in those cases as well. Case statistics by type with animal violations, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly just to see we've had some upwards and downward trends. Last year we had 180 animal violations. This year so far we have 50, so we're on track to get about 200 cases. Roughly consistent with what we had last year. You may see there's been a number of reports in the media and social media about some of our more egregious animal violations, 25 cats in a house, over 100 cats in a house. So those are the cases that we're handling. We're also handling the corresponding animal impoundment hearings, which is an administrative process that corresponds with the underlying criminal case. So those are other types of hearings that we're hearing. With code enforcement violations, in 2025, we got 88. 2026, we've only gotten 7 so far this year. I actually reached out to Chief Brady because I'm like, wow, that's really low. Are you guys not fully staffed? Did we lose an officer? And what he said was, with the weather, the lack of snow, they're not seeing a lot of snow removal complaints. With the first quarter's generally slower, and most importantly, most significantly to our community, they're finding that the number of investigations are the same, but people are coming into compliance with code violations much quicker. That's a really good thing. That's exactly what we want to see, is that change in behavior without having to involve the court process. So that's not a bad thing, and hopefully it'd be great if we could stay on that same track. Traffic violations, as you've seen, if we stay on the same track as first quarter, we'll have about 8,700, so that's an almost increase of about 3,000 this year for us. Ordinance violations, we only have 240 so far this year, whereas last year, if we're staying on that same track, would be at 960, so that it's a decrease. This year, and we'll talk more about this, I anticipate that's largely contributable to the decreased number in OSS tickets that we're receiving. Again, that's a really good thing, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit in terms of why we are getting that decrease in OSS numbers. But most of our ordinance violations, I'd say about 60 to 70% of our ordinance violations are OSS defendants. So I attribute that decrease to the significant decrease in OSS tickets. Parking violations, we're on track to get about 432 parking violations this year, which obviously is an increase from last year of about 100. Juvenile ordinance cases is on track. So last year we had 412, and we're on track to get about 420 this year. So roughly about the same as the last 2 years. Court revenue. I always do a little bit reminder about court revenue that we are not, and we'll talk about that in just a slide. Just a real quick check-in on court revenue. In 2025, we had about $1 million. So far in quarter one, we're about $417,000. If we stay on track based on quarter one numbers, we'll reach $1.6 million in court revenue. So obviously our court revenue is going up. Part of this is the obvious. We've got a lot more tickets. And the more tickets you have, inherently the more court revenue that you receive. The quick reminders about court revenue is that we are not supposed to be a revenue generating source. I'll talk more about this when we get to fines and fees. We are revisiting our fines and fees, but it's really important for me to reiterate as much as possible, I am not allowed to be a revenue generating source. My goal always with court revenue is that we're meeting our expenses. Over the past couple years, our expenses have exceeded our revenue. So our revenue's been roughly average about $900,000, and our expenses, just our operational expenses to running the court, is about $1.5 million. So we're in a much better track where our revenue is meeting our expenses. That's exactly where we want to be. I will tell you, I've looked at other cities to see, gosh, are we really like messing this up? Have we really? In most cities, expenses usually double the revenue. So the only city that I found where the expenses match the revenue is Thornton. And a large part of that is all of a sudden they got a massive increase in case numbers. So they were able to match expenses to revenue. Our probation department, really quickly, we've got 2 full-time probation officers. Ms. Pine primarily supervises juveniles, whereas Mr. Lurs supervises most of our adults, and he also oversees the One Small Step program. So this is just some data and some of the things that they're doing. They do pre-screening assessments for juvenile cases. They do pre-sentence investigations for both juvenile and adult cases. So pre-screenings are usually about a 10-minute interview just to do a quick determination on juvenile risk level so that we can make sure they're getting on the right track, whether this is a diversion path or whether they have higher risk, higher needs. Pre-sentence investigations are after someone's entered a plea of guilty. We set it over for sentencing to do a much further, usually about an hour-long interview, to make sure that we get a whole case history, make sure we know the education, employment, any mental health, substance use disorder concerns, so that we can, again, tailor the sentencing right. We don't do it on a lot of cases. We're really trying to tailor that to the most high-risk, high-need cases, and specifically people who have committed the most egregious violations. We have a lot of probation partnerships, and I know Ms. Levinson submitted some questions, and I thank you for those. A lot of our partnerships we heavily rely on to make sure that we're able to apply the appropriate interventions with our defendants on probation, including both juveniles and adult probation supervision. We work very closely with school resource officers, Savio House, which 30 years ago, I worked there prior to law school as a day treatment counselor. We work with other municipal court probation officers, Jeffco Schools, Community Services. Mirror Image Arts is a new partnership for us, and that's been an incredible partnership. They work with our some of our juvenile defendants as a diversion program. So they have it's a 2-week program where the kids go in for 2 hours in those successive weeks. And they go, and what I really love about it is it gets to the kind of root issue of what the juvenile experienced or what their violation was that brought them in, and really walks them through that identification of what was this issue, how did it happen, how did it affect others, rather than just having a juvenile watch a class and check a box and write an essay. This really dives a much deeper and allows them to be much more introspective about what happened and how they can do better moving forward. So it's been a great partnership. It's not appropriate for every juvenile, certainly, but they've been great. And what I really want to highlight here is they originally came to us and said, we'd love to be a partner with you. It would cost the city about $8,000 per year. And I was like, we don't have a budget at all. And they were so fabulous that they went out and got a grant to cover it. So it's 100% funded. So our juveniles aren't paying for this service. So kudos to them for being such an incredible partner and finding a way to make this work for us. Mirror Image Arts also works with Jefferson County Probation and their Pathways program. I'm flying through. Juvenile probation supervision, we currently have about 61 juveniles actively supervised on probation. These are kids who are not appropriate for some sort of diversion program. Looking towards the future, we're looking for more intervention programs. So our probation officers are consistently meeting with outside partners and programs, nonprofits, and non-governmental organizations to develop those partnerships, so we're finding better intervention programs as much as possible for our juveniles. This is just the numbers of how much our probation officers are supervising over the past several years. Our adult probation supervision, we currently have 22 adults actively supervised on probation. Some of these are OSS defendants who have kind of bombed out of OSS and just needed a higher level of supervision. They just weren't appropriate for the OSS program, but definitely needed a high level of supervision and intervention. Mr. Lurs meets with them weekly to make sure that they're receiving the right amount of interventions and services and resources. Again, they focus, whereas juvenile probation focuses on bringing the family in and family intervention, sometimes it involves family counseling, adult probation really focuses more on adult behavioral changes, treatment, mental health, substance use disorder, cognitive restructuring. Oftentimes when offenders get into that adult probation supervision, you're really trying to focus on changing that criminogenic thinking, which can involve a lot of intervention. This looks at our number of adults sentenced to probation. As you can see, Mr. Lurs supervises the vast majority of our adults on probation supervision. One Small Step Court. Again, this is a 12-month program focusing on stability and housing. Participants move through 4 phases. We just updated our phases. They have weekly check-ins. They meet with our case managers. Having the homeless case managers and having now 2 full-time and 1 part-time through City Manager's Office has been an incredible gift to our program. I cannot tell you what an amazing change they have made just in helping people get to self-sufficiency. It has made a world of difference, because previously we just had Mr. Lurs, our probation officer, trying to do this case management, and you cannot do case management with these high-risk, high-need individuals meaningfully. It was too many people. I think he was trying to supervise about 80 people and do case management, and you cannot do meaningful case management. So now he's sharing the love with the homeless resolution case managers, and they're just knocking it out of the park. They're working towards obtaining vital documents, applying for housing assistance, employment. We've had a ton of people go through go into sober living, detox, long-term treatment. It's been incredible. We have a multidisciplinary team. We cannot do it without this team. We're always looking at it from a holistic picture of, what's everyone's role and who can we rely on as outside partners. This is our phase structure. So you can see it's very simplified. And we have basic expectations in each phase. So usually the first phase is just show up weekly. Show up and check in with our case managers. Show up and check in with me. Start getting your vital documents. Phase 2 is you've showed us that your consistency, you've gotten your vital documents. Now let's working on phase 3, developing a case plan. What is your pathways towards income? What is your pathways towards employment? Stabilization, treatment if needed. And phase 4 is looking at that long-term plan. We have several nonprofit organizations, and I know this is one of Ms. Levinson's questions as well. We have several nonprofits that we rely on to provide that treatment, supervision, resources. We can't do it. I agree with you. It's not our role as the court system to provide treatment or to provide housing or to provide a mental health or substance use disorder treatment. So that's why we rely on our nonprofit organizations. We have SafeSide, who's been an incredible partner. C3 shows up every week. Jefferson County Public Health comes in, usually it's usually roughly quarterly to provide immunizations. More recently, we added on Salvation Army, which has a sober living home for women on the west side of Arvada. We have community medical services that helps with Suboxone and methadone treatment. Benefits in Action is soon to be added. Stride started coming this week, which is a huge addition, which I'm super excited about. They provide medical treatment for a lot of our defendants. And so that's actually one of our homeless wigs, is to add 4 additional nonprofit partners to our OSS team. So we're making great strides in that area, which I'm really excited about. In terms of adults sentenced to OSS program, as you can see, the numbers were kind of stable for a while. It started to go down, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Total, we've had 372 people go through the One Small Step program. Right now, we have 84 people in the program, 24 active participants, which means they show up every Tuesday, and we have about 60 people on warrant status, means at some point recently they failed to appear, and we're just waiting for them to get picked up for court. We have 7 active participants who are housed, and over the course of the program since 2021, we've housed 65 people. And again, we're not housing them. Our nonprofit partners are doing this. Our nonprofit and case managers are doing this. But it's people who've been through the program and done incredible work. They've made the great strides to do this. Before I get too much further, we have seen our OSS numbers go down. So about a year ago, I'd say we were getting about 50, 55 people per week. That was a lot. And honestly, it was hard to have meaningful conversations and check-ins with me, 50 people in a short time in an afternoon. I think it was too much. The most beautiful thing that I've witnessed over the past year is that a lot of our defendants are now getting housed. And if you think about this, these are high-risk, high-need people that I never thought we'd see off the streets. And these are people who are picking up 10, 15, 20 cases in a year. So when we talk about our OSS numbers going down, or ordinance violations going down, it's because a lot of these people are now housed and no longer picking up violations. That's exactly what we want. That is success. And just the sheer fact that our OSS numbers are going down and we're now seeing about 24 people rather than 50 people, that means that those other 25 people, they're housed, they're off the streets, they're not picking up new law violations. That's an incredible amount of time saved by the PD. It's an incredible amount of time saved in the courts. The resources are all extremely saved. Jail, I mean, I could compound the resources that were put into the revolving door, it felt like. But once we got a lot of these individuals housed, we're just not seeing them. And that's such a win. I'm going to tell a couple quick stories, and I'm using their initials for anonymity's sake. The first one is a defendant, DG. He started in February 2023, and he's one of those people that had been on the street since he was about 12 years old. He was in and out of foster care, aged out of the foster care system, had zero stability in his life, and a ton of trauma and neglect and abuse. He had 47 cases with us since 2022. So if you want to talk about PD resources, jail resources, court resources, admin staff resources, it was an insane amount of resources spent just in handling him through the criminal justice system. When we started working with him in February 2023. In April 2025 is when he really started to first obtain stability. He worked with our homeless case resolution managers, and they got him into the suburban suites, or suburban studios. Prior to going there, he spent some time in substance use disorder treatment. He then went into suburban studios, was able to maintain his sobriety, started working, SafeSide did employment, vocational activities and training with him. He was able to get a full-time job. He started working at a carpet cleaning business. He was able to save up enough money to move into an apartment that was assisted, but just recently, he's been sober for over a year, worked full-time, and just moved into his own apartment. That's exactly what we want. That is like the perfect case scenario. And I have to tell you, this is someone who I never thought we'd see success with. His methamphetamine addiction was so significant that I thought, man, I don't know how you kick this. his amount of trauma, the history, the life he'd spent on the streets, the criminogenic thinking that he had just embedded in that life history was so significant. And the fact that this person was able to do exactly, what our hope is. We utilize Suburban Studios to provide him that platform, to get the training that he needed, to get the education, to get the treatment, to get that sobriety under his belt so he could apply for a job, he could apply for housing. I mean, it was just how it's supposed to work. A couple others that I want to highlight here. On PP on the bottom right-hand corner, this is another individual who, he started OSS in April 2024, but we've seen him in our court history. Like, if you look back in his court history, probably has over 70 cases over the however many years that we've had full court, and we've tracked our cases. Chronically homeless, 26 cases since 2021, frequent police contact, and I mean like multiple times a week, police contact. He was accepted into permanent supportive housing at Marshall Landing in November 2025. We have not had a single case on him since then. That is a miracle for him. He's still working on sobriety. He's still working on those future things, but just the fact that we haven't had any municipal court cases, that worked. Like we put our resources in the right place with someone like PP. I won't go too far into the other ones. You can read it on your own, but we're making great strides. And so when you start to see these, someone who had 26 cases, in a 4-year period, and all of a sudden we're not getting any, our numbers are going down, but that's a win for us, and that's a really good thing. On our horizon, we needed a new case management software. We make great strides in going paperless with full court, but it's extremely outdated. It's a software from the 1990s, and we're having a lot of problems with it. I think our city attorneys can echo. It's horribly outdated. It's very difficult to work with. Most other municipalities who had full court have moved beyond it, have experienced the same troubles with we are. We already have the money saved up in our budget. We're just working on getting on IT's radar to implement that over the next couple years. Our facilities, we're just out of space. I've talked a couple times about the need for running 2 courtrooms. We have 0 space for our existing team. We have no room to grow. We don't allow for remote or hybrid work just by the nature of our work or a customer service-oriented department. We have to be here to serve the public. And so that means everyone's here every single day of the week, and we just have no room. I can't add any team members because there's no place to do them. I currently share an office with my relief judges, and so we just need more space. I talked earlier about this, but in 2025, we ran 2 courtrooms 8 times over the course of the year. So far, just in the first 3 months, we've run 2 courtrooms 10 times. And we have it on the horizon and I know Mr. Rush and I have been working on finding council chamber space, but we're doing it almost every single Tuesday, some Wednesdays and some Fridays. So it's a lot. Our average monthly visitor count, I stole this from the facilities master plan. As you can see, we're the most frequently visited department in the city. Our average monthly visitor count is about 1,100 people as of 2025. We're one of the fastest growing departments, along with PD, legal, and I think those all go hand in hand. The more PD staff we get, the more we need legal and the more we need municipal court staff. This is just some kind of obvious on why we want to allocate more space for our department. It's a better customer experience. I think it's really important that we are one of the city's main customer service facing teams in the city, and we want people to have a good experience, to say, wow, the city of Arvada really does it right. And I've got some pictures coming up, but when you've got people sitting on the floor, people sharing chairs, we're not doing it right. We want a safe work environment and we want increased efficiency. One of the things that we're proposing, and this is just an idea that we're out there, I'm still working on some things on this, is to move our current probation officers into the break room that's across the hall. You may not be aware that we have a break room across the hall. It's a not frequently utilized break room, but our proposal is to move our probation office in there. That would free up some space in our current existing office. Another thing that we're working on is live streaming. This is going to be mandated by law in a couple months, and this would give greater transparency. There's the Fairness and Transparency Bill that's pending in legislation right now. We've had a lot of glitches in the process. It's a project that we've been working on with IT since August. I hope to be up and running by the first week of May, so stay tuned. The couple glitches that we've run into is that we have jail video advisements that we do with the jail. That is a virtual hearing that we do with the jail with inmates, but we now need to get that onto the webpage so that anyone can view those. We also need to make sure that anyone can view what's happening in our court proceedings in the courtroom, but we also need to make sure that when we're in court here, that we have the technology to make sure that people can run court in here, because again, that's required by law. That we have live streaming from here, live streaming from the courtroom, live streaming for jail video advisements, and we also do virtual hearings every other Tuesday. That's a fourth set of technology that we need to set up so that we can live stream. So it's a lot. It's taking longer than anticipated, but we are going to get there by the first week of May. We are going to be modifying our fines and fees. These have not been modified in over 20 years. So it is long overdue. We're far behind. We have not adjusted for inflation. I talked a little bit about this, but my approach is, again, we're not a revenue generator. Revenue is not a factor in setting fines and fees. Fines, the purpose of fines are to promote accountability and encourage better choices, and fees are just supporting the cost of essential services operations. I'm focused on fairness, grounded in purpose, and committed to our community when we're looking at fines and fees. We have a need for court security marshal, and I'm going to go through this because I realize I'm running out of time. I believe I've talked to you about this in the past, but we have some significant security concerns. Our current security staff is amazing. I want to highlight them. We've got a really good team, but there's a lot of turnover in that role, and we don't have a consistent security or court marshal. One of the most important things I want, in addition to the basic security needs, is that right now, when a person receives a conviction in the municipal court, if we do not send the paperwork for that conviction over to the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, and they record that conviction. But if they don't have a corresponding set of a biometric indicator, in this case fingerprints, that conviction is not recorded. What that means for us is currently none of our criminal convictions are recorded. We don't have a court martial to do that fingerprinting, and we've talked to the PD about could they take that on, and they don't have that staff for it. The only way I can get this done is either to have someone from the police department take on this work or get a court martial. It greatly concerns me that we have very significant criminal events happening that should be on people's records, like assaults, large thefts, repeat theft offenders. Those type of things should be on someone's record, and none of it's recorded. And that's one of my biggest concerns for court martial. I've got a couple quick videos, and I recognize I'm running far out of time, but this just shows and highlights the need for security in a court martial. The first video, and some of the words are profane, but this is just some of the basic. This is kind of an everyday occurrence in our court. I don't think you're appropriate for community-based supervision, so I'm going to do something to make those minutes. Give me credit for time for 2 days. It does look like you served at least 2 days previous. Okay, and you can stop it. So this was me trying to sentence a lady to jail, and she was like, no, not today, and she just walked out of the courtroom. With a court martial, they could stop her, say, no, you need to sit down, you're going to go into custody. And there was nothing. She was even in a boot, and I kind of joke, but not joke, that even being in a boot, she was able to escape and avoid jail. And I don't believe we picked her up since. So that's not what we want in our court system. The next one, please. This was a juvenile that I was trying to sentence to probation. Thank you. As you can see, he was very upset, very agitated. It took several officers. They ended up having to gunny sack carry him out of the courtroom. He damaged several portions of the courtroom. He broke a bench, he broke a wall. He ended up with felony charges for the threats he made both towards me and towards the officers. And ultimately, we closed our case out because we felt like the state court system was much more appropriate to handle him. But he was very agitated, and what you're missing is the first about 10 minutes we didn't have an officer in the courtroom, and he was going off. And it's one of those moments where I'm pushing the button saying, where is everybody? Get up here quick. Thankfully, ultimately, the officers were able to get up. Next one, please. And this last one is sentencing. Again, I'm trying to sentence this individual to sentencing, and she actually got out of, I had her take a timeout because she was being really disrespectful. She got up while I was trying to have her take a timeout and started to approach the bench and come up towards me. Thankfully, her mom grabs her in a bear hug, but you can hear this. Whoops. And you can see here, one of our security officers thankfully heard the commotion. She had been getting agitated for a while, but we had to clear the courtroom, and this ended up shutting our courtroom down for about 30 minutes that day with a full juvenile docket. She ended up getting arrested and charged with threats made against both me and some of the officers who arrived. So things get hairy really quickly. One of the amazing things that we recently did is we worked with the facilities team in the police department that when we pushed our panic button, there was a delayed response because it went to JEFCOM, and then JEFCOM had to dispatch the officers. So, and it feels, I will say that in the incident with this last juvenile, it felt like forever because she was coming at me and I'm like, get security up here, like really nervous. The officers were there about 2 minutes and 30 seconds in, but when you're in that moment, it feels like forever. So PD and facilities recently worked with us to get a faster alert system, which is amazing, but still, if you have a body in the court, none of that's gonna happen. We talked real quickly about pending legislation. Thankfully, some of these bills failed, but we are seeing the fairness and transparency in municipal court. We already comply with the majority of the requirements contained in that bill, including having court-appointed counsel for all video advisements. The one thing that we're not currently in compliance with that we're working on is the live streaming. So we are working on that. So we've gone over our celebrations, our case statistics, our numbers are going up. We've talked a little bit about probation and one small step, what is on our horizon, and I wanted to leave it for any questions. I don't think I made 30 minutes, though. I apologize.
Katie, you're great.
I'm sorry.
Don't stress. Don't stress. Yeah, you take the time you need. Okay, Councilmember Davis. Oh, it was on for a while. I think it might have been an accident. Apologies. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Mormon.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Judge Kurtz, for this report. So appreciate your energy and your compassion in the work that you do. And I guess I have a couple questions. One is, I remember when I met with you for the first time several years ago now, and you impressed upon me how much the juvenile cases were going up pretty fast and talked about what's happening in schools with fights and things. Are you seeing that trend continue, or is it slowing down? Is that changing at all?
It's interesting. I feel like every year we have different swings and trends in the juvenile world. For a period of time, we were seeing a ton of fights in the schools. Specifically, I was seeing a lot of fights at Arvada West and Pomona, mainly Pomona. And all of a sudden, it stopped. And we had a group of juveniles in my court for, I think it was the Explorers Club, and I asked them, gosh, we used to see a ton of fights from your school. What's changed? And they said, we actually had a cultural shift. And I'm like, I don't know, whatever you did, but that needs to be replicated. We do see a lot of fights now from North Arvada Middle School. That is probably the one school that I see fights. I don't see a lot of fights from other schools anymore, but North Arvada Middle School certainly has some sort of cultural violence going on there. That is concerning. That is a trend I'm seeing. The other big trend I'm seeing is a lot of marijuana in schools. You kind of joke about the smoking in the bathroom. They smoke pot in the bathroom all day long, apparently, in every single school, and it's not tied to one school. We see a very shockingly large amount of it, and that is a concerning trend for me.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. And then really my second comment is on just wow on the stories and the accomplishments and success of OSS that you're seeing and you're getting, and in partnership, I think, with our homeless case managers, from what I heard, the work they're doing with Suburban Studios, and of course the partnerships and the other organizations that are involved. And so I just want to compliment you and everyone that's worked on that, because I think what we're doing now is working. And I would say when I came on council, it didn't feel that way. It felt like we were really struggling and not making the difference. And now we are really gaining ground on the work and the investments we're making, and that's paying off. And it's not just about investing in an individual. That's important, but it's also investing in the community, and that's paying off in the community now and having that impact and that positive impact. So I just wanted to recognize that, and what you've shared today I think is really phenomenal, and let's keep it up.
Yeah.
I'll quickly add, I know a couple of years back, Pomona brought in a new principal. They also merged with the middle schools to create a 612, and they were very intentional about what they did with the culture of students there. And so it just really, really warms my heart to know that that has been paying off and been paying dividends with those young folks. Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Well, and I also think our SROs do a good job trying to change that culture.
Absolutely.
So I'd give them kudos as well. Couple things. One, the Marshall, that's interesting that you're asking for Marshall, because I swear we approved one.
So we talked about it, and we did put it through the budget presentation last year, and we're still working with city managers and finance to explore the best way to fund that.
Okay.
So we're working on it.
But I also thought it was approved when he first introduced a security protocol, because before you were here, or maybe it was right when you got here.
We had a marshal at some point.
Yeah, and what happened to that position?
I don't know, because that all predated me. I do know that we had a marshal at some point, and I don't remember. Before 2018. So it's been almost 10 years.
So, I understand, I agree with the marshal, but you got a marshal and now it disappeared. So we need to figure out, maybe some background on where it went before we do another marshal.
I can do a deep dive on that.
Yeah. Because, when we intentionally give these FTEs, we just expect they're doing exactly what you need, which is the security you need. So maybe we can find out about what happened at Marshall and make sure that if we do this again, the Marshall position doesn't, go away. It stays.
Sure.
Yeah, it stays. Because I think it's extremely important that you have a Marshall in the office all the time. So a little disappointed that it disappeared, which was probably beyond you.
I was going to say, I don't know. It all predated me, so
No,
I can't speak to it.
Predated probably most people in the room anyway.
I think so.
But what I've learned in government is the intentions when you give a position, and then with the churn of leadership and management and the needs evolve, you repurpose a position sometimes. And I think this is one that should never be repurposed. It needs to stay there, be focused, and all the time. So I guess that's most of my intentions around that. As far as fees and fines, I agree that you're not to generate revenue. Completely agree. Mm-hmm. I agree that from the fees perspective. I don't necessarily agree from the fines perspective, because I think it needs to hurt. Some of these folks do not feel the hurt. And maybe in my district, what your fees and fines may be just a drop in the bucket and doesn't mean anything when you're holding somebody accountable to something.
Sure.
And so I think I agree with your fees, but I don't think the ceiling should be limited on the fines when we're trying to curb behavior. And so I just want to make sure that that ceiling is not there on the fine side.
Sure. What I did is I surveyed most of the municipalities in the Denver metro area to figure out where they're at and how they assess fees and fines. And my goal, I've created a new fees and fines schedule that I'm working with the city attorneys on and implementing right now. And what I've created is consistent with what other cities are doing and in line, so we're not far behind. I think right now we're probably the cheapest place to get a ticket, and it shouldn't be that. The other thing I'll explain in terms of fines is my fine schedule is always a starting point, and the fine can go up or down based on aggravating or mitigating factors, and I certainly take those things into consideration, like the nature of the accident, the prior driving record, things of those natures for traffic offenses, and then criminal violations are certainly a totally different analysis. So I absolutely agree with you. The whole purpose of fines are a deterrent effect and frankly, sometimes a punishment effect.
Right.
And I'm trying to make sure that we are up to date with inflation and current practices with other cities.
Yeah, I just think there are certain knobs and levers that we don't want in our city. And as you know, there might be some ordinances and there's these discussions of minimum fines. Like we are wanting to set your minimum because it's important to us.
Yeah.
An example like I'm advocating for is on these e-bikes. I want the parents to have automatic in the jail, or not in the jail, I wish, automatically in the courtroom, appearance, and a minimum fine. And because right now, they don't care what the police say. They don't care that their kid could die. And that is not what we want in a community.
Yeah, I will tell you that we're seeing a lot of those e-bike tickets. Parents are required to come to court. And I believe our city attorneys are
They're working on
giving
things, I
very appropriate plea offers, taking into consideration the nature of the offense and the impact to the community.
Yeah, and it's getting almost criminal in some of the things they're doing. I mean, it's an easy way to go take something from somebody and dash off and be, gone. So, I mean, I just want to make sure that those are just my opinions around fees versus fines. And then from the OSS, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. It's taken a long time to see the success come out of those, and I think because some of these things are, they do take time. I will say, I have mixed feelings with how much energy we put into it for the success, but what it does highlight is each individual needs to be treated as an individual and are prescribed, and I think bringing in your partners and bringing everything and don't put it all on the courts. I'm thinking of a previous council member that kept saying we probably need to be careful how far we go into this. I agree with that, but I also agree that you can be a convener and you don't need to do it alone. And I think you've discovered that, and I think that's why your successes are probably picking up a little bit faster, is that your partnerships are getting stronger, they're more collaborative, you're bringing more and more people. Like you said, you want to bring 4 more nonprofits, I think it was on one of your slides. I think those movements have major successes in the OSS story, very positive. Again, I would just stress that, we can sit up here and armchair quarterback how to solve some of these issues, but it's the practitioners in this room that actually solve it. And I think you giving us feedback on how you're solving it and what you're doing, and that it's letting you prescribe and your partner groups prescribe how to individualize the treatment of that issue has shown that success. So keep going down that path. That's great. And I'm glad to finally see some huge needle movement on the OSS and your clients and customers.
Yeah.
It's a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Ambrose.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just have 3 comments, one question. So yes, I really appreciate the One Small Step program because I think it deals with the most difficult homeless, people who have the highest barriers to being rehoused, which are the people who don't want help. And I think having to come to court and being like, you have to get help, that is part of your sentence is you're getting help. And I think that it's very promising to see the long-term impact that's happening, and that the numbers of the chronically homeless in Arvada are going down because they are getting housed. And these are people that you would give up on, like you were saying with your story, like people who are severely addicted, people with severe mental health issues, people who the rest of society has really given up on. We have to clean up as a municipality and you as a court. So I really appreciate the One Small Step program is actually having a success with some of those people that when you think of the word homeless, this is the people you're thinking of, and which is not the majority of homeless folks, which are people living in their cars or people couch surfing or things like that so I really appreciate because this population is the most difficult population to get resources and to keep and keeping Arvada safe. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate your success here on the most difficult part of addressing the issue. The other thing I'll say is I really appreciate that the partnership with Mirror Image Arts is working, and I also connected them with North Arvada Middle School. I think it's in the phase because the Mirror Image Arts not only has a diversion program, but they have a prevention program of changing the culture. But I think they're still in the phase like they were with us when they first came of they need to find the resources to really help change the culture at North Arvada Middle. And so I hope that connection will be working because they do have the prevention part as well to address culture. So hopefully we'll see the results of that change when they can be resourced. And then the question I have is, I know with the state laws alignment, like we could not have any sentencing with going over the state maximums. Is that also the same with the fine schedule? No.
Well, I shake my head quickly, and then I really should say it depends. There is actually a disagreement. The case, the camp case that came down from the Supreme Court is not clear on that issue. There is disagreement in the legal community about whether it does apply to traffic fines and fees. There is a large group of municipal judges who say, or who have opined, and I am in agreement with them that it does not. I will tell you, if it does come out, either through legislation or on an appellate case, that it does apply, our fines will be significantly lowered, because state fines and fees are lower. Right now, we're operating, there are several municipalities that are operating under the opinion that it does not. But I'm headed to the Municipal Judges Conference tomorrow, where this will be debated. So it's not clear.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Griffith.
Thank you, Mayor. Judge, thank you for the presentation. It was really comprehensive, and I have to commend you. That was probably the best sales pitch for anything I've ever seen.
Thanks.
Like 100% behind getting you the municipal court marshal there. I think that is well illustrated.
Wow.
And I'm quite honestly shocked that was, those are the things that you had to endure.
It's interesting. Someone just asked me the other day, I was doing court in here, and this lady snuck in afterwards, and she goes, is anyone ever mean to you? And I said, every single day, every single day.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, again, I want to commend my staff, because most people behave when they get to me, but they don't with my staff. Ms. Meyer was just telling me, we were joking about a case that we had earlier, I think it was today, and to me, she kept it together, but she was very rude and swearing at Ms. Meyer. That is an everyday occurrence. So again, when my team gets customer service survey responses, 85 very good or excellent, when people are swearing at them all day long, like, it doesn't get better than that. So
yeah, I would agree. That was the other thing that caught me by surprise. I wouldn't, like, if you were a Yelp, I would expect you to get very low scores, because who wants to go to court,
Yeah.
So very impressed with that. I just keep hearing about the bike thing. That's kind of interesting. I know very little about it. I see a bunch of young kids on bicycles doing what seems dangerous in my neighborhood and around town. But do we confiscate the bikes? Or
we don't.
No.
So what I can tell you is the juveniles often receive tickets. It's an e-bike violation. It's riding an e-bike on city property or something along those lines. There's a couple different offenses that they can be charged into the court. Most often, they receive what's called a deferred prosecution, which means they don't enter a plea. We set the case out for a period of time. There's a $100 fine assessed, or supervision fee, and they're ordered to write an essay about the dangers of riding e-bikes on city or public property. I tell the juveniles and their parents, please do not ChatGPT this essay. I read every single essay that comes into me, and if you ChatGPT it, I'll make you do it again. IT gave me a little cool filter that I can tell if it's been ChatGPT. Most of the time, if a 12-year-old's using big words, you're like, do it again.
Furthermore.
Exactly. So that's kind of the standard consequence that we're seeing right now, and it's kind of balancing the safety of the community, educational component. There's a punitive component to it, parental responsibility as part of that. And I hear all sides of it.
I'm not one for dragging on time that we don't have, but I would entertain having the individuals read their essays to council. I think that would be a wonderful thing to consider.
I can send you them. I can send you the essays, and a lot of it is, I think they ChatGPT'd it and then rewrote it.
It's the getting up in front of public and speaking that is terrifying for kids.
100%, yeah.
And I know we've had some fatalities, young folks, and it's not a thing to play around with, I joke, but I'm kind of serious in the sense that I don't want the young folks that are out there riding e-bikes thinking it's not a big deal.
Right.
And it sounds like it is. It sounds like there's a lot of things they have to
Right.
deal with. But if we continue to see that behavior and it continues to be an issue, I want to look at escalating it until we can
Sure.
discourage it effectively.
There's a lot of community feedback about this issue. I see it on Facebook and Nextdoor, and so we certainly take that into consideration that the people are upset.
Yeah.
People are understandably upset about this issue. On the converse side, what I'll tell you, because I'm always balancing both sides, is I hear from parents, hey, I'd rather have my kid outside in the parks, enjoying the sunshine than sitting inside and playing video games.
Fair.
And I see that side too. And I'm also the parent of a teenage boy who thankfully is a little bit older than this e-bike craze, so we missed it by a couple years. But I also get from a parent perspective, you want your kids outside. It's good that they're riding bikes. It's good that they're out thing, but they need to be respectful and they need to follow the law.
Yep, no, totally agree, and it's a good thing to look at it from both
Right.
perspectives. Thank you again for the
Yeah.
presentation, and yeah, we absolutely need to get you some support when you're in court.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Thank you so much. Obviously, very concerned about the court martial. I understand we have limited resources. I appreciate your partnership with Mr. Wick to explore how these are best resolved within the constraints that we have. And just great job. I know the paperless system has been absolutely such a beast since we first started, and I'm thrilled to hear that is going so well. And yeah, tickets are going up. I know we've made a lot of noise about traffic enforcement. I'm sorry that comes back around to you, but I am glad to hear that that we are fully staffed and that we're able to get to the things that were happening, but were going unaddressed before. And that's what's really important. It's not that we've seen this massive spike of crime. It's that we are able to get to things and address them in an appropriate way. And so I'm very thrilled about that, even if it does mean more work. We'll work with you to get the resources we need to make sure we keep up with it. And as for the e-bikes, one thought comes back to me. We had a lot of discussions about a bike park some years back. Yet, I'm not saying, let's go create a bike park. I realize that is way more effort and time and energy. But it might be something to loop back around to and start considering again, is all I'm saying. Yeah, well, the motocross, I know, that's a very different beast, but it's worth looking at. So with that, Mr. Wick, do we have any staff updates this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make this quick. I do have a few things I want to talk about tonight. First of all, I'd like to briefly mention about the Kite Fest that happened last weekend. We estimate that there were about 10 to 12,000 people that showed up there, and I think what's really important about this is, this is like an Arvada-only event, and it's a really popular one. Even though we had intermittent wind conditions, I think everybody had an overall great experience there. And some of the things that I think are really catching about this is that this year marked the introduction of the student art contest that resulted in Ralston House selling some t-shirts that netted about $3,400 for the Ralston House, so that was really good. We didn't have any reported power line entanglements, so that's always a really good thing. And one of the things that really caught my eye was that Majestic View Nature Center offered a Make a Kite class on Friday and Saturday before the event. And so it's just, I think it's an example of the operational excellence that the team puts into this and pulled off a really great event. And obviously it's widely enjoyed and loved by the community. I also want to report that Canyon Pines is now officially in the Arvada Fire Protection District.
Wonderful.
That inclusion is complete, and so now that opens the door for additional work that we can do with the developer for permits. What I would say about this is that this is about a years-long effort of trying to get everybody coordinated with Coal Creek Canyon Fire, Arvada Fire, the developer, the city, to make the exclusion and then inclusion work. And it took a lot of time and effort. A lot of our legal staff time was spent trying to make this work along with Arvada Fire and their legal team. So at the end of the day, even though it did take a while, that is done, and that's good news for the Canyon Pines area. And then Saturday, we have the City Council Strategic Planning Retreat, so we're looking forward to seeing you there. And then next Tuesday night, April 21st, we have a really full agenda, including some public hearings. That will take some time, and we have an executive session at 4 p.m. So look forward to seeing everybody on Saturday, and until then, have a great rest of the week.
Excellent. Anything from you, Ms. Morris?
I think I've talked enough for tonight, so nothing for me.
All right, we are adjourned.